the thing with cold calling is just don't make it weird. Just walk in. Don't be nervous. Don't be afraid. Whether it's in person or if it's over the phone or whatever, it's just you just got to do it. If you're afraid of it, you won't do well. You just kind of got to embrace it.
This is the Full Stack Sales Pro.
What up, Full Stack crew? Super excited to have you guys in this episode today for y'all listen. We have an absolutely amazing guest. He happens to actually be just a leader on our internal team of what we do here at the Sales Mentor and Traffic and Funnels and all that. But the best part about what he's going to be able to talk to you guys today about is not actually so much what he does here, but really where he came from and how all of that sales experience and how he transitioned that into what, obviously a lot of you guys as our listeners are listening to, being high ticket or the internet marketing space or anything of that, particular. So anyways, without further ado, you guys welcome Jeremy Smith to the show. What up, Jeremy? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Heck yeah, dude. Thank you, first of all, for taking time out of your schedule to chat with us. I actually know how busy you are, so I'm grateful that you were able to do that. I think the best way to kind of even get rolling in this would be really telling people how you came into this space, what we know because of all of the sales experience, what you did from there. And then just kind of like tell us more about that, what your experience was, and then we'll get into how all of that's transitioned you into where we're at right now. Does that feel good?
Yeah, 100%. So
Heck
how
yeah.
I ended up in this space would probably be easier to start with, and then we'll backtrack. But mutual friends with Taylor, and I was just at a point in my career in sales, working for a pretty large corporation, and I just was like more and more and more less fulfilled every single week. I still loved what I do. I performed well, but the law of diminishing returns definitely started to kick in with that. And I was looking for a change. Somebody just mentioned Taylor that I know and got us connected. And I think within about a week, I was moved down to Nashville from DC working for Taylor. So it all happened really, really quick, but it's probably been the coolest transition I've ever had in my life. So
Nice.
that's how we got here.
So what were you doing? How did you get into sales?
Yeah, so initially car sales, when I was in college, didn't want to do like a normal restaurant server bar back type of job. And my brother-in-law's brother was a manager of a car dealership, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, And he convinced me to come sell cars for a summer. And my first month in, I was top sales guy at a small little dealership in Memphis. And from there, it spiraled on into many different things. But that was the start.
Gotcha. So you got into car sales. Were you like 18, 19 or in that college
18.
age, right out of high school? Okay.
Yeah,
awesome.
18.
What was that like? Because let's say, I don't know, that would have been maybe 10 years ago now.
Yeah, 10.
Yeah.
Very
Cars
interesting.
were very different selling back then than as it is right now. Different.
Absolutely. It was a little bit of a different ball game. You were more commission based than the average salesperson in the car world today, which is usually like an incentive type of pay plan. So you really had to do sales, and you had to hold gross on vehicles to make your commission. Very interesting being 18 years old. I grew up a little bit of a sheltered home, I guess you could say. I wasn't really aware of the pains of the world, but hopped into the car business as an 18-year-old kid with 45-year-old men that are, they've been in it forever, or they washed out of the mortgage business in '08. Was very eye-opening to me. I learned a lot of really, really great stuff, but also experienced a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, nice. So what was that? Explain a little bit more what that was like once you kind of got in. What were the ways, things that because have you ever done sales before that moment?
Not really. No, my dad was a sales guy. So, I was always around salespeople. And for me, it always seemed like the sales guys had the most fun, whether you're at a restaurant and they were having a company event with clients, it always seemed very shiny object to me because I would get to see all these, pictures of my dad out entertaining clients and going to expensive dinners and all that stuff. So, it was my first go into sales, but I was pretty excited, getting to throw on nice shoes and a nice outfit and a tie and cufflinks was a pretty cool experience. So,
Yeah. Wait, were you having to wear like tie, cufflinks, and everything in the heat of the summer in Memphis?
oh yeah,
Oh
oh
my
yeah.
God, I would have never made it in the heat of the summer wearing cufflinks and a tie. I probably would have passed out. I would have
You would have
sweated
made
through
it.
every shirt that, yeah, it would have been so tough. Okay, so you get into sales, and what was the first like thing that you just started realizing very quickly? Like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this about sales, or stuff like that.
Yeah, the first thing I actually picked up on was obviously how fun it was, but the reason why I was having so much fun with it because I've always been a social person and a people person, and you get to talk to this person who needs something that you have, and you get to walk them through the process. And if you do your job well, and if you handle objections well, you make money off of it. So for me, I was getting paid to hang out with people, which for me was like
Mm,
my dream. But I would say the best lesson that I learned right off the bat was, and sticks with me to this day, was to stay away from the huddle. That's an old car biz term, but same thing with the water cooler. You and I have had these conversations, where it's,
yeah, yeah,
if you're feeding negativity, or if you're around that group of salespeople who are feeding negativity, how much that actually carries over into your performance, your mindset, everything that you've got going on. It could throw you way out of pocket.
yeah, yeah.
So
What so you're saying that there were negative people in the car sales business?
believe it or not, man, they're everywhere.
Believe it or not. Okay, this has nothing to do with normally anything, but I'm going to ask it because I'm curious. Why is there a bad rap on used car sales people?
That goes back
Is it
to
accurate?
probably, yeah. I mean, no, yes and no, right? Like you have some incredible used car people out there that do everything above the board, but the industry is notoriously, I wouldn't say slimy. People give it that type of rap, and I think mostly that comes from back in the 70s and 80s and before then, where you could have a car that was actually worth 3,000, but if somebody just didn't know, you could sell for 8. And if they finance that, then what happens is this person's now in like a 300% loan to value situation. They're never getting outside of that loan. It'll take them years to pay it off, and they'll never get their money out of it. I just, there was a lot of stuff that was abused, and people were taking people for a lot of money, and that's where it initially comes from. But there's some great people out there, some really good used
Yeah.
car salesmen.
Would things like, what the average, like myself, the average consumer, is things like, your Carfax report and the way that people buy cars now, has a lot of that been, you know, mitigated out to where it's like, okay, you can't have that dishonesty anymore as much.
Yeah, there's the level of like having more information, kind of what you're referring to,
Yeah.
where it definitely weeds out the ability for somebody to pull the wool over your eyes in a sense. But even after '07, '08, and the different government organizations started implementing different rules and regulations around lending specifically. So, most banks won't lend you more than 150% loan to value, including any type of warranties and stuff that you actually wrap into that product. So the days of signing somebody up at a 200% loan are kind of over. So it
Yeah.
just, between intervention in that regards to protect the consumers that are out buying vehicles, and between the information that's available to you online through Carfax and things like that, it's a lot harder to get raked over the coals, but you still can.
Yeah. Okay. Because I want to get back to what we need to be talking about. What is one piece of advice you would give to people who have to go and buy a car, a new or used, that you would say, hey, here's Jeremy Smith's, tips and tricks to not get raked over the coals?
Cool. I'm going to save you guys all about $3,000 in interest charges. Whenever you go finance at a dealership, let's say they show you a 4.99% rate, you're probably actually approved at 2.99. Dealers can hold about 2 points in interest on you. Every F&I person's probably screaming in their chair right now if they're listening to this, because I just snagged all of their commission from them. But make sure they give you buy rate, not sell rate. That's the terminology you need to know.
Nice. So you need to know that buy rate. Okay, cool. Back to the program show. So you're in sales, you're doing cars. How long did you stay in that lane? Was it just a summer and then you transition?
No, so I stayed in car sales from 2012 to 2015. I worked in Memphis for only a couple months, and then I moved to Nashville. Was working for Crown Ford in South Nashville at the time. Stayed as a car sales guy, but once I moved up here, I started to transition into the finance department at the dealership, which is kind of where the money is. And when it comes to commissions nowadays, they're the number one right behind service, moneymaker in a dealership or an automotive group. So I got to learn kind of how to manage relationships with banks and, other third-party companies that, help me make money, right? Managing those relationships, really spreading the wealth around with different people in order to maximize like what I could do. But inside of the retail side of the car dealership for about 3 years, and then I moved over into the lending world.
Got it. How did that transition happen? Like they just saw because you were crushing so many deals that they're like, okay, this is the next step after selling a vehicle, is actually transitioning into the finance side?
It was actually really cool. So I worked with a gentleman named Rod Ross, still to this day, one of my all-time best mentors when it came to sales, anything, in just life in general. He's an incredible guy. I worked underneath him. He taught me so much. Made it to where I actually wanted to show up to work because I was actually learning really cool stuff from him. And his wife was a VP of a really large consumer lending company that we actually did a lot of business with too. So I had a little bit of a relationship established. And because of how I showed up, how many hours I was putting in, how many sales I was making, he got me connected with the company that she worked for. And they were like, look, this guy can sell. He's a hard worker. You guys should snag him and build him up into something. So, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was like December 12th, I think, 2015, I believe, where they took me to a breakfast. I didn't know I was on like an undercover interview. They started talking to me, and by the end of the breakfast, I got an offer letter in my email. And within about 2 weeks from that point, I was able to move to DC and got started. So,
wow. So you went from Memphis to Nashville, then Nashville to DC, and it was all through the car business. So all along, you're learning how to communicate, how to talk, how to manage because most people probably listening to this podcast are used to having like marketing and people giving them leads to call. In the car space, you don't have that. A lot of it is foot traffic, and then over a long time, you have a book of business. Is that correct?
Yeah, you definitely establish a book of business over time. You do get to walk up people. Where I really learned how to manage a pipeline was kind of in the next phase of my sales career, though. In cold calling specifically, you had to sign up X amount of new partners a month just to keep your job. And so I was very used to and accustomed to walking into an owner's office or a CEO's office and stealing 15 minutes of their time unannounced. Got kicked out of a lot of places doing that, but
yeah. Okay, so tell us about that. Like what that looks like, that type of sales perspective, because I think it's very eye-opening for a lot of people.
Yeah, so it was a newer type of strategy for me, going from the car business where most of the stuff kind of walks in or you build it yourself, to managing. I had a portfolio walking into that business of already signed up dealer partners of mine. I had about 500 at the time. And I had signed up over the next 3 years about 1,000. So I ended up having to manage 1,500 clients at one time, as well as continue to sign up new ones. So, the thing with cold calling is just don't make it weird. Just walk in, don't be nervous, Don't be afraid, whether it's in person or if it's over the phone or whatever. It's just, you just got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're afraid of it, you won't do well. You just kind of got to embrace it. And when you have the weird, funny situations where somebody escorts you out with a police officer, or things of that nature that hang up on you, you just kind of embrace it and move on, or
Wait,
you're
how
like me and
many
you continue
times
to
were
go back.
you escorted? How many times were you escorted out by the police?
Probably 12 to 13.
And they were just like, sir, you can't be here. We don't want your financing options.
About 5 of them were from the same guy too.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, I eventually signed him up as a client though. We made a lot of money together. So
Yeah, well, does he ever feel bad and apologize for having you escorted off the property?
absolutely not. Absolutely not. He
Of
does
course.
not care.
Why would he? If he's going to escort you off, he's sure as hell not going to apologize.
It's just kind of a weak move if you have to apologize after.
Yeah, for sure. It really is. Tell me about, we've had a couple of guests on that had careers where they started in sales, and a lot of it has cold calling. I feel like the majority of our listeners right now have not really fully experienced that cold call world. Why, in your experience, do you think people have such a hard time doing the cold calling stuff?
It's a lot of rejection. You hear a lot of no's. Something that we obviously talk about with our internal team. A lot of the maturity of a salesperson is the ability to hear no after no after no and still continue to do the right thing every time. When you hear a lot of no's and you're cold calling and you're dialing 250 different people a day, the rejection's intense, and I think that gets to some people that are maybe not rooted in the right things.
So how do you get rooted in the right things? What does that mean?
At least for me, I can really speak to what works for me. It's knowing what I'm ultimately chasing after, knowing where I want to be short-term, long-term, actually having goals set up, and not just arbitrarily setting up goals, but actually reverse engineering those goals and figuring out, okay, on a daily basis, what are my tasks that are going to get me to that goal, right? So it's systematized. If I wake up on a Monday, it's not like, oh, well, what am I going to do today to create revenue? It's what am I going to do today and accomplish that after I accomplish the byproduct will be revenue, right?
Yeah. So for you, being rooted in and being able to handle the rejection is knowing why you're honestly willing to take the rejection. Yeah,
my desire and hunger for the goals that I have set, which you and I have talked about, I mean, they're up there, right? Like my desire for those goals and to achieve that trumps any type of rejection, any type of cold call, awkward scenario. None of that stuff will faze me because my desire to hit that outcome is so much greater than maybe the frustration that I see in 30 seconds or for 30 seconds after I get off a phone call, it didn't go the way I wanted it to.
Yeah. Do you believe, because I love this. I mean, I know that we've talked about this, in essence, off camera or off the mic, but I'm wanting to ask because I want people to have a better understanding and insight of what it means. This is something we deal with our own team of like, they'll hit X amount of number of calls. It doesn't yield said result. And so they're just like, oh, and I'm like, why are you, like that's what the production role is. That's what it is. I'm wanting to hear from you. Like, do you believe that can be taught, or is it just because your personality is wired that way?
Oh, it can 100% be taught. My personality is like I'm an 8, so I'm definitely pretty goal oriented, and I desire to achieve my goals. But I think anybody can learn that. It's just, are you at the place in your life where you're willing to maybe sacrifice an hour or two at home on a Tuesday night? Or are you willing to put in an hour or two to hit your goals and your KPIs? Like, are you willing to go the extra mile and actually put in what it's going to take? I was talking to another salesperson earlier today about something similar, and it was, ultimately, I would rather put in an extra hour, 2 or 3 a day right now in this season of my life to hit my goals and my targets than have an hour to go home and watch a Netflix show, right? Because that's not going to
Yeah.
get me to where I want to be ultimately, right? And so I don't even know, if, Josh, if it's as much as teaching somebody that. It's just them understanding that this level of hunger is what it takes to get to that next level. And if they're not that hungry, you need to reassess what your why is, why you're doing what you're doing, realign yourself with what you ultimately want.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, when I look at like myself, because I'll not bring anyone else in. When I look at myself, and the reason why I feel like I can take the lickings, you know what I mean? Like take the notes,
Yeah.
the rejection, whatever it is because I'm so fixated on that. But it wasn't always that way. Now I would be fixated on something like in a previous career. I was like, okay, I want X, and I'm going to go for it. But I actually didn't. No one ever taught me how to reverse engineer it to know what it was. So even though I was fixated on it, there was a lot of frustration. Because someone right now could be like, oh, I want 30, 40 grand a month, no matter what. And then they're not hitting it, and they're like, I want this, and I am obsessed with it. Why am I not getting it? It's like, because you don't know how. You've not reverse engineered it. You've not done the math. You've not written it out plainly and clearly and set it before your own eyes to know, like, this is what's going to take. Then in comes our favorite phrase that we use here, which is power comes from self-honesty. It's like, how could you even be honest with yourself? Because you don't even know what you want. So you lack power, which power is simply the ability to influence a situation or people for a desired outcome. And it's like,
Yeah.
you lack that power because you don't know what you want. And I'm like, that's the part where, like, I mean, there's a training that we're doing right now that we're getting ready to launch for our full stack sales summit that's coming up. Ooh, shameless plug. Hey, we have a full stack sales summit coming up June
There you go.
29th, 30th, and July 1st. I haven't even talked about it yet. Not once. I should probably do that. But we're doing this training,
point.
and it's the idea. Yeah, the idea is to kind of like teach this very thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about your backstory, and it's like, man, you had such a work ethic put inside of you. I'm assuming at a young age, but at something it caught you. And although like every human being, you're growing, you're learning, you're developing and getting better every day. It's like you had that thing in you that's like, no, I will. The trade-off for what I want is a Netflix show and an extra hour over here. Does that make sense?
Dude, when I think about problems, and like it could be little or small things that pop up daily, right? I always just take a second and I try to revisit, okay, the version of me that is now accomplished these goals and these things that I've set for myself, could he handle that? And 99.99% of the time, it's not even a question if that version of me can handle that.
Yeah.
And I take that and bulldoze whatever the problem is out of the way, because it's not worth it to me. The trade-off to not hit my goals right now is not worth it at all.
Yeah, man. If people could take that one thing that you just said, the whole entire show, the trade-off to not hitting your goals is not worth it. That right there, I think, would increase closing percentages. It would increase desire, passion, wants, work ethic. Knowing what I won't do is not worth it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, absolutely brilliant. Okay, so you go from finance, you doing it there. Then how did we get to here, to this space?
Yeah, so I back up for 30 seconds. I was working in consumer lending, managing really, really large markets, kind of in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic of the U.S. And I just kind of hit a wall. Was a little bit sick of the auto industry, just kind of started to fall out of love with it. It just wasn't really there for me anymore. And like I was saying earlier, I really wanted to just kind of wipe the slate clean. And, doors started to open for me. I had a couple different doors that opened up. And, the one big question mark was actually coming to work for Taylor, because I didn't know anything about what we did. I mean, I didn't know what we sold. All I knew was Taylor was really cool and all the salespeople had a lot of money. And that was it, man. There was more Teslas in the parking lot than any other vehicle. So I was like, this could be a fun place to work.
Yeah.
So I ended up kind of just taking a big leap of faith. I knew it was way different than anything I had done before when it came to sales. And, a mutual friend got us connected, decided to just go ahead and jump right in. The day I got hired was the day I got an apartment in Nashville. 2 days later, I moved down here. And then I believe within the next 4 days, I started working in the office. Incredible life move that I would have guessed would have panned out the way it did.
So when you came into the space, which was the space being high ticket closing, more phone based, I mean, most sales cycles, especially in the car world, are probably much longer than what this one is, because most of the time this is in a 45-minute to an hour, call for the most part. What was that like transitioning?
It was fun. It was really fun. One of the things that I loved about being in the retail side of the car business was you would take somebody from stranger to paying client, usually within the 3 to 4 hour window. Getting somebody to spend almost sometimes equal the same amount of money in a 45-minute window was like instant gratification, so much fun. There's just a rush to selling high ticket, and getting on a call with somebody, overcoming objections, and at the 45-minute mark, being able to like close the deal out as one, go ring the bell in the office, and then get on another one right away. Like it was so quick and so rapid, and the frequency of which you were on and off calls was so much fun. There were some challenges for sure,
What were some of the biggest challenges?
Really adapting the style of sales. I was used to way longer relationship building type of sales, handshakes and dinners together. And, having to kind of reset back to the baseline of everything that I had learned about sales in the beginning, get back to the basics. And then from there, build into kind of this new branch of sales for my skill set, So there was a little bit of a learning curve there, but fortunately we had some great people on the team. I was able to listen to some calls, take really good notes for the first week, and then hit the ground running. And first full week, I think I closed like 6 deals. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I mean, obviously you had tremendous success when you were closing full time. And then obviously like any great closer, you get moved out because there's always way too much value, within that person to keep them in that role. But looking back now, if you were to look at other, people selling Cutco, people door-to-door knocking, people honestly, even in, T-Mobile, Verizon, car sales, why would you, recommend this space in this field for sales?
Yeah. So much of sales nowadays isn't really sales at all anymore. We've, as an industry, we've gotten so far away from our baseline. Could be due to companies that you work for or whatever the reason is. There's a lack of actual real sales involved in most sales jobs nowadays. So for me, the reason why I would recommend this to anybody over any of those options that you mentioned is you truly do have an uncapped income. We've watched, you and I both, people come into this industry, never done sales before, and have a $40,000 a month or have a $20,000 a month.
Yep.
Just because there's no cap on what you can do. And you truly are paid based off of how much you put in, how hard you work, how late you stay, how many calls you take. The fact too is like, the numbers that we were throwing around earlier. I think 2015, this was a $46 billion market. We're estimated to be over 300 billion in 2025, the e-learning industry. Just that industry for high ticket sales alone. I mean, you're never going to not have an opportunity to close deals. You're never going to be without a job. You're more recession proof. You're more, whatever proof, right? We've gone through several things in the last couple of years that affected people's sales jobs. So the ability to always have a job, ability to make as much money as you want. And then also I would say the ability to have some flexibility and kind of live a little bit more of a balanced lifestyle.
Yeah. Do you believe that in the high ticket space, somebody can have a balanced lifestyle, have freedom, flexibility, be with their family, but at the exact same time achieve, great heights and results?
100%. Some of it comes down to the organization you work for. But I believe in any organization, especially a high performance sales organization, there are ways to systematize what you do from 9 to 5. And if you are really effective and you're really efficient and you constantly sharpen your skill set to get better, close deals faster, close deals more often, you can hit crazy income targets and work 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week. But it's all on how you set yourself up, how you set up your pipeline, how you work your pipeline, stuff like that. So if you set yourself up in the beginning and you create systems and processes to only make you more effective and efficient on calls, off calls, you can have as much balance as you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. I agree. Which all of that greatly affects your closing percentage, which if you can get to a point where you're at 35, 40%, staying consistent at that, I mean, you're almost at literally 1 out of every 2, right? So yeah. Even if you were at 33 and you're at 1 out of every 3, man, you can maximize a whole lot more just by increasing that. Oh, that's good. Okay, man, dude, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you so much. This has been an absolute epic little show just because I think it gives people a very clear understanding of like the trajectory of where people are at, and no matter where they start from and what they could learn, sales is something that could take you anywhere, literally around the world, but definitely in any field. And with the way that the world is going, this online industry space, their e-learning online, you're right, it's not going away. I mean, at this point, the internet has to literally shut down for people to not have job security.
100%.
Well, at that point, we're in an apocalypse, so it doesn't really matter. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, you don't even need to worry about it. You just need to worry about...
Find me and Josh.
Yeah, just find us. You'll probably want to work on our farms. So, anyways, well, as always, I love to end doing this. What is your funniest or worst close story ever? Like one that would just leave them on a good chuckle.
I had a gentleman. He was just a very optimistic, upbeat guy. I was nurturing. This was actually for traffic and funnels. He, I believe, lived in the Philippines, and he calls me one day. I've been nurturing him for like 2-3 months. And he's like, hey, man, look at your Facebook Messenger. And so I open up Messenger and I see just a stack of $100 bills. And I was like, hey, how did you get this? Because like 3 days ago, you had no cash on hand and we were going to have to like come up with a different game plan. And he starts telling me how I believe he like stole his uncle's farm animals and sold them to come up with the cash to get the help that he needed. And he was so nervous about it that he was asking me to delete all of the messages. He didn't want to get caught. Like it was a really, really funny thing in the moment that I probably laughed more at than anything.
Yeah. So. Because that's how you know when you've got something good, that somebody will literally go to any height to leverage a goat or farm animals to achieve said results. Also, I just want to go on the record saying that we at Traffic and Funnels do not support you selling other people's property to then yield you a return and a result. Also, Taylor, Chris, I'm sorry, and NSA, we had nothing to do with it. Well, Jeremy, thank you for your time. Thank you for just giving us your wisdom and dropping some knowledge. Guys, if you want to learn more about Jeremy, hit him up, follow him on Facebook, Instagram. We'll put his links in there. But he's over here just crushing it at our companies, especially in the sales mentor space, really helping, guiding, empower, enhance. And we have a new training with Jeremy coming out real soon, literally teaching you how to make the most amount of money possible off of your CRM. Really diving into the weeds. It's probably I would say to date, it will be the most tactical training we have ever done in the history of the whole entire company, because it's so nitty and gritty that it's going to empower any sales professional. I don't care what CRM they use, it's going to empower them. So that'll be on popping off real soon. So thank you for that as well. But thank you for today, man, and appreciate you.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. All right, guys, as always, you know the drill. We ask nothing of you other than simply, if you got something out of this, just share the episode. The episode is meant to empower you. It's meant to inspire you. It's meant to influence you to become the best version of yourself. That's really what it comes down to. So if you got something out of this episode, please share it with somebody. If you know somebody in the car industry space, and be like, you got to hear this guy's story. He was getting people to sell goats to buy stuff. So you want to share that. That's all we ask, because that's where it's going to make the most amount of impact. But other than that, Full Stack Crew, until next time, appreciate you.